producers. It's your boy, Matt from Music Producer School. Hope y'all are doing well today. It is Thursday, and we are going to be doing part 2 of our discussion on effects today. So I hope you're ready. I'm going to get started in just a minute. I wanted to, again, be sure to invite everybody who's coming on the replay, or if you're live right now and you're not a member of the Music Producer School community yet, be sure to join. I just put the link in the comments. I'm going to be over there on Saturdays, and I will be listening to your tracks. So you post your track there on YouTube, SoundCloud, any type of streaming link. I'm going to listen to it live while I'm on live with you, and I'm going to give you feedback on your track. We've been doing it for a few weeks now, and it's been a lot of fun. Everybody's been, getting some good tips, I think, from listening to other people's music. It's hard. We all listen to our own stuff so much. It's just hard sometimes to really get out of your own head. So listening to other people who are kind of trying to achieve some of the same goals is always fun. So be sure to join the Music Producer School community. Also, I'm trying to pump up some of my other social links. So if y'all wouldn't mind, click the Linktree link that I put in there and go ahead and follow me on the rest of my links. We're on Instagram, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff. So y'all do me a favor, share this stream and go and join all those other social platforms. Follow us there as well. All right, enough talking. Let's get to some producing. So today I wanted to continue our discussion on effects. So what I also wanted to do today is I had made a post a couple days ago talking about if you guys had any questions about anything, to please let me know. So let me go ahead and I'm going to throw up some of the questions that we had here. Let me just keep us in Ableton here. And I'll go ahead and throw up some of our questions here. So we had some user questions, and the first one I'm going to address is my boy Shreth. So Shreth asked, because Shreth has been participating a good bit, and I appreciate it, Shreth. So he asked, should I record vocals in stereo or mono? Okay, good. I wanted to start with this one because it kind of ties in with the effects thing that we're going to be doing today. So what you have to understand is in panning, right? We have a center, we have a left, and we have a right, okay? So what a lot of people don't understand is that in order for something to be truly stereo, you have to have different information on the left channel than the right. So this is why if you record your vocal, okay, and it's just a single, now Shrest, there's kind of two different ways that you could address this question. When you say, should I record vocals in stereo or mono? What you need to understand is when you record a single source with one microphone, that's mono. When you record a single source, like a vocal, let's say my voice, with two microphones, that's stereo. Now, it gets a little bit tricky though, because my microphone that I'm using right now, which is the Blue Yeti, it records in stereo, but the thing is, the capsules are so close together, and you can't really open the microphone up and point them in different directions. So it's a little bit of a weird situation because it's recording with two microphones, but because those microphones are so close together, you're not really going to get any type of wide stereo sound. You will get the impression as I move from left to right of the microphone in certain situations, you'll get a little bit of movement. But when you say record vocals in stereo or mono, if you're talking about a single vocal, you want to record your single vocal most of the time in mono. which means if I'm just recording on a track, it means just one channel. So no left right stereo, just a center, one audio waveform. What's up, Joey? Thanks for kicking it with us, dude. Appreciate it. So if you say I want to record my vocals in stereo, now what I like to do is on a typical track with a vocal, I like to have my lead vocal just right in the center in mono. Again, this kind of relates to what I talked about in a previous class about bass sounds. Bass, especially low bass, low frequencies, I like to have those in mono right up the center. Because the thing is, as panning starts to happen, the speakers, if it's say like a hi-fi system or even like a most club systems are in mono anyway, so that's another important thing. Always check your mixes in mono, especially if you plan on your stuff being played on large systems, large sound systems. So I like to record my vocal in mono, and I put my bass in mono because as you start spreading stuff out left to right, it can kind of get weak. So the weakest thing, you definitely want your strongest thing to be your vocal and your bass, right? And your kick drum also would be an example of a mono stuff in the low frequencies. So I'm going to put my vocal right up center in the middle in mono. Now, if I'm recording some vocals on top of that vocal, kind of like when I showed y'all a few classes ago in the vocals lesson, we did a whole week on vocals, where I was kind of stacking left and right on top of the center vocal. So I'd have my center vocal here, and then I'd have a background vocal here on the left and a background vocal here on the right. And it's those differences between left and right, meaning you can get your vocalist, or if you are the vocalist, try to record your stuff super tight so it's almost an exact copy as close as you can get it vocally, but don't just copy and paste. When you copy and paste, it's a perfect copy, and you're not going to get that width. It's going to be the same exact thing. Even if you delay one side a little bit, you're really just kind of doing like a phasing type thing or a flanging thing. So you need to do separate takes. So if I did that vocal, that would be 3 separate takes. Lead vocal in the center, background 1 on the left, background 2 on the right, and it's that difference on the left and right that gives you some nice separation. Now, to relate it to what we're talking about with effects here, if I have, let's see if we could use this piano. Now, another good little trick for this is if you look at the meter, it's probably kind of hard to tell if you're watching just on the stream right now. Let me see if I can zoom in for you guys a little bit here. Okay, so watch my master meter here. See it on the bottom right? You see how the left channel is a little bit louder than the right? What that usually tells you is that whatever you're listening to is stereo because the left and the right are different. It is possible that you could have a sample where they just screwed up and they just did the exact copy and one is just louder than the other. But typically, if you see a difference there in the left and right channel, that means that it is stereo. And then also a good way is to listen in headphones, and if you feel like you can hear the sample or the instrument around you, it's going to be a stereo sample, okay? So let me zoom out of that. Now what I wanted to do to relate this to our effects stuff is, let's say you have a mono sound. So for example, if I was to... Let's put in a MIDI note here. And it'll just be nice and short. And I'm going to freeze this track. And I'm going to flatten it. Okay, you see how it flattens? And I have 2 waveforms here now. And you can almost kind of tell the waveform on the top left looks a little bit different than the one on the right. Like, you see how I have this spike right right about here on the top waveform and it's not there in the bottom. These are some of the visual cues that you can use. Whoops, let me move Shreth's question out the way here. So these are some of the visual cues that you can look for. You see how I have that transient at the top right here? It's a little bit higher of a spike than down here. So that tells me that the information is different. So what if we had so this is a stereo piano, right? So what if we had, and I don't think I have any mono pianos handy right now, but that's okay. What we're going to do anyway is I'm going to create 2 tracks, and I'm going to pan this guy all the way to the left, all right? Which means another thing to understand about panning when it comes to stereo and mono, when you're panning something, you're not actually moving the sound to the left per se. If you're talking about a stereo sound, if you have a mono sound and you move it to the left, what you're doing is think of every sound as being stereo. So if it's mono, it means you have the equal same part coming out of the left and right speaker because it is the same thing. It's just one mono vocal. So if I pan if I pan a mono source, a mono vocal to the left, basically what I'm doing is just taking away the volume from the right channel. And now all you're hearing is it coming out of the left, and vice versa. If I pan it to the right, I'm taking away the volume from the left speaker and the volume's coming out of the right only. Now, if I have a stereo sample, if I pan all the way to the left, I'm going to actually get rid of that separate, again, stereo is actually 2 audio waveforms. So I'm getting rid of that waveform on the right if I pan over to the left. So I'm only going to hear that waveform on the left. If I pan over to the right, I'm actually getting rid of that waveform on the left, and I'm only going to hear what's coming out of the right. So let's see how this works in practice. Okay, I just duplicated my piano. So I have the first one panned to the left, the second one panned to the right. So I don't believe... Okay, so for the first one, let's not even worry about the second one yet. The first one I have panned all the way to the left, right? So I'm going to turn on my resampling here, and we're going to record in this left sample. Okay, so you see how I have just that one waveform now? So now I know that it's just that single mono source. And then for the other one, I'm going to do the same thing, but for this other sample now. All right, so now you can see I have these 2. Now, the way Ableton handles mono and stereo, it'll put them on the same track, whether it's mono or stereo. So even though this is now a mono signal, it's only on the left side of the waveform, and down here I have the right side of the waveform. So it's actually in Ableton, this is something that is not as graceful as it could be, but I forgive Ableton because I love it for a lot of other reasons. So what I can do now is I have in Ableton a width plugin here, and I can bring my width down to 0, and I'll do the same thing on the other one, and I'll bring it down to 0. So now, if I freeze these 2 and I write them to audio by flattening them, if I write them to audio by flattening them, I'm gonna still have the same issue because Ableton handles them like this. So let me just put this in center. I'm gonna put the width at 0, and then I'm gonna record this in as mono on this next track. Okay, so yeah, Ableton doesn't like to break apart these waveforms, so I'm not even going to worry about that. What I'm going to do here is let's put these both to 0. Actually, you know what? Let's do something a little bit easier, because I kind of explained to y'all what the difference there is. But let me show you with an actual mono source now, because that's going to be a lot easier to show you how it ties in with the effects thing that I wanted to cover today. So I'm gonna go to my handy initial preset here. Okay, so now we have a mono source. Okay, so when we're talking about effects, the reason that you would want to maybe use an effect like a reverb is, let's say for your vocal, it is a mono source because you want to have it nice and strong right up the center, like I just said, right? But what if you need the vocal to sound like it's in a space? Or let's say you have a snare drum that's just one microphone on a snare drum, but it needs to sound like it's in a space. Well, this is where we start getting into using our effects. So obviously by just throwing this reverb on here, the reverb simulates a left and right room, a big space. So now I'm going to start getting a little left and right information. So right now it's just straight up the center. And I can even put my mono plug in here. But then when we turn this reverb on, now I'm getting that left and right information. So this is a good way with effects to start getting a little bit more, again, like you're in a space. And it's also good if you're trying to do something like to get a little left and right movement. Again, if it's just a single vocal and it's a lead vocal, depending on the song, it might be a little boring. So let's also do maybe a delay. And you see here, I have this delay. I can link both the left and right sides. So I'm just getting that delay because the left and right is linked. It's just right down the center. But if I want to start getting a little bit of movement going, I would unlink the left and the right. And now you can see on my left and my right, I have the ability here to change the sync. Now, don't confuse this on link. This is linking the delay time. The sync button here is actually letting me sync it to my tempo. So I can sync it to a quarter note here. They've got eighth notes, different divisions. But if I link the delay time, I'm just always going to get that center delay. But now that I've not linked them, listen to the left and the right movement. I'll exaggerate a little bit. So you can hear that left and right bounce now. So again, the main point I wanted to make today was, if you have a mono source, reverb and delay are excellent effects that you can use to give a little bit of stereo width to your sound. Because again, not everything is just always going to be straight up. What's up, Antique Gaming on YouTube? Thanks for saying hello, my friend. Appreciate it. So let's check out kind of what I wanted to explore today was a couple more ways to get some stereo sounds going from your mono sources, because Shrest had asked that question about should I record vocals in mono or stereo. I kind of explained the stacking procedure, but if you're just working on a single mono vocal like a lead vocal, there's a couple other things you can do. So if we're not going to use reverb or delay, we can also use a chorus, which actually is a delay, and it just is a lot quicker delay. So I can use that to kind of get a little bit of a spread in my stereo sound. So you can hear that with the chorus on, without, straight up the center. Now this high pass filter, what that does is it's going to allow me to only chorus the top pieces of the sound, meaning the higher frequencies. Because again, you really don't want to be screwing around with your left and right stereo stuff on low frequencies. It just doesn't ever work good, especially when it's played on larger systems. So if I was doing, say, if I wanted to spread out a synth like this, or say like a lead vocal, I would probably do my high pass pretty high, like up in the 4K, 5K range. Because what happens is when you're doing that, if you just give the listener the sense of the stereo space, that's really all you need. So chorus is a cool one. There are a couple other things. Ozone, isotope ozone, for example, which I love to use. Now, ozone has something called an imager, and this actually is kind of almost the same thing, where you see it has this stereoize feature. So you can again take a mono source, a truly mono source, and turn it into stereo. So I can keep pushing up my width here, and it's going to start getting wider. So you see, it's cool also with ozone because they give you the vector scope here, and you can see what it looks like visually. So this is, again, my mono source. Just right up the center, right? Now as I start to widen it, watch what happens. Little more. Little more. And you can see how things start moving from left to right. I'll do this stereoize. So you can see how that would also be something effective. Again, I like to, what's up, Manuel? I like to use some of these stereo source things when I'm using, again, like a vocal. And another cool little trick for some of this is I usually probably wouldn't even put this on the track. I would put this on a return track. So I would create another return track here. And I would take this stereoized deal and I'd put it on my return track. And then that way, like I showed y'all in the previous lesson, I would throw an EQ on it. So that way I know that I'm only going to be getting more of the high stuff that's affected. And then I would send this either, like, again, it could be a vocal, it could be a synthesizer. So that's our regular synth. And now I'll start sending it to the ozone, the imager. And you can hear it starts to get a little wider. And now I can come back with the EQ here and I can just kind of play around with it there. So I would probably set this to really wide. So those are some cool ideas. Now I'm using this on a single mono synth. A really cool way to use this is going to be more on stuff like vocals, especially your vocals. Send a little bit of that to an imager is really cool. The delay thing is also, I use it all the time, where you get a little bit of that bounce from left to right. Another cool effect to use with the delay thing is something called Echo Boy from Sound Toys. You can, again, replicate this in any DAW, but I just like to kind of show y'all some of these because it'll give you some ideas. So Echo Boy is cool because it's kind of this built-in kind of left to right bounce thing that I'm talking about, where you can just get it a little bit quicker. So that's an eighth note delay. I could do a quarter note again. I can set a groove here. And this is on my single echo down here. I can do a dual echo. And you see I start getting that left and right movement, a ping pong. So again, these are super cool to put on your mono sources. And this is kind of what, when I think about effects, these are some of the cooler things you can do to, again, kind of breathe a little bit of life into your tracks. So the last thing I'm going to go over today when it comes to effects is these, we talked about kind of the more modulation, like chorus, flanger type stuff. We didn't get into any of the crazy modulation effects yet. I may save that for the next one. The main thing to know with that, though, is that a lot of that stuff is actually just a delay, but it's just super short delays in most situations. So like my simple delay here, instead of doing a chorus, I can do a super short feedback time. A super short delay time. and my sync time here I can make super short. See, and I start getting a little like almost like a phasing thing going there. So just understand that's kind of just introducing you to the idea that a lot of these special effects are just delays. They're just very short delays that they're going to be just tweaked a certain way to give you a certain sound. So the final thing I wanted to talk about today, that was kind of to answer Shreth's question on, you know, mono stereo. That was kind of a whole topic in itself, so that took a little bit longer than I planned, but that's okay. I appreciate the questions. We did have another couple user questions, so I tell you what, let's try and wrap up with some of those so I don't forget anybody since y'all asked. Moses asked the steps in mixing beats. So Moses, I'm going to make a whole class on mixing beats and just on mixing a song in general. I would go back to some of the previous classes where the main thing I would tell you to keep it short today is organization, organization, organization. Label your tracks, group your tracks, because I think the main thing I conveyed in a few classes previous was you want to try and group all your stuff. So say you have 5 drum tracks, get a good mix with your 5 drums, and then group those into one subgroup track or an aux track, however you do it in your program. Because that way you can continually keep going from big tasks to smaller tasks. So you get your drums sounding good together. Don't spend too much time doing it because you'll need to adjust them. But then group them into one channel. So now you have your drums all on one fader. And then do the same thing with, say, your synths. Mix them all together pretty good and then group them into one fader. So that way by the end of the mix, you might only be messing really with like 7 or 8 faders total. All your vocals on one fader. All of your background vocals, one fader. All of your bass sounds, one fader. And just subgroup everything, and that makes the process a little bit easier. That's the quick answer for that. I'm going to be doing a whole course on that, so stay tuned. I appreciate the question, Moses. Also, one more quick thing on that. Again, I mentioned this in a previous class, but I'll mention it again. Be sure to pull up some reference tracks of good, professionally top-level artists that you like that's kind of similar to the genre you're producing. Put those into your session. Make sure that you're listening to them not through your mastering chain or your mix chain, because that will affect the reference track as well. You don't want that. Pull in some good references and listen to what they're doing, because it's one thing to listen to a reference in your car, but if you're mixing in your studio or at your computer, you need to hear those reference tracks on the same headphones or on the same speakers that you're using. So that's all I'll say about that for right now. Thanks again for the question, Moses. All right, our next user question we had was from Jonathan George. See what Jonathan had to say. Jonathan said, greetings. I love music, and my music cannot be interpreted completely by producers how I feel within. I want to become a producer. Can you help me with the basic course? Okay, yeah, Jonathan. So I'm going to be doing a full-length course probably in the next few weeks that I'm going to release. I actually have a couple courses already done and pretty much ready to go, but the ones that I did already are more... like I told you guys before, I work in every almost genre there is. So the course that I've already pretty much done is actually on country music. If you let me know what style of music that you're looking to produce, and if anybody else watching is interested in that, let me know what type of music you're producing. Are you doing EDM? If so, what style? Are you doing hip hop? Are you doing pop music? Whatever it is, give me a comment and let me know, and I'll try and tailor what I do as far as courses to tailor to what you guys want. Jonathan, it is hard as an artist if you're not working with the best top level producers. And that's what I'm trying to help everybody here do, is whether you're doing your own music or you're producing for other artists, that really is the pinnacle of what you're trying to achieve. I always talk about trying to make everybody become a problem solver. And that's the thing, you always run into these obstacles in the studio or when you're producing or writing a song. And if you're not working with people that know how to jump over those obstacles, it can be frustrating. Trust me, I've been there. So you want to be a problem solver, and that's going to kind of be the focus of what I'm trying to teach you. So my best advice, Jonathan, is just stick with it. Find one DAW like Ableton or FL Studio or Logic or whatever it is. Find one that you like and stick with it, because again, I can't stress enough, the faster you work, the better you will be, because it just gets tiring. If you're working on a track and you're looking for a sound that you hear in your head, but you can't make it happen quickly with your fingers, that's always going to be frustrating. So learn a DAW and stick with it, at least for a while, until you get fast with it. Thank you for the question, Jonathan. Be on the lookout for a course very soon. I appreciate it. All right, our final question, and we're going to wrap it up with this for today. Evolutionary Trapco Big Man said, mixing and mastering. Okay, yeah, this is a good one to end it on. I kind of showed you guys a little bit more about some effects today, how you can incorporate that, again, with these mono signals to make them sound stereo, which is always cool. Now, you don't want to do that on everything, because the bigger everything sounds, the smaller everything sounds. You only need to make a couple elements sound really big and kind of set the stage for your track. And once you do that, you don't have to get reverby all on everything or putting delays on a lot of stuff. If I'm using reverb or delay, I'm usually only going to have it on like a vocal, maybe on a snare, because again, those are the two loudest elements, so they kind of set the stage for the song. And then I might have something on like a synth or a part where I need to put some reverb on it to put it back in the mix a little bit. But those are usually the only things that I'll put effects like that on. So Evolutionary Trapco asked about mixing and mastering. So for mixing and mastering, again, I'm going to do some courses on this stuff, but I think a lot of people in the beginning, producers especially, they think that, oh, it's going to sound better in the mix, and then when the mix doesn't quite get there, oh, it'll sound better when it's mastered. And I can tell you this, I always think about mixing and mastering as kind of like if you're washing a car, you kind of just like with the hose, you just kind of wet your car down and you kind of, set the stage for everything. That's kind of like grouping your tracks, labeling stuff, organizing. The next step is you get, your towel or your cloth or your sponge, and you start cleaning the car, right? You're cleaning the car. This is the production phase. And what you got to remember is the less that you clean the car now, when you go to detail the car, which I think of mixing as the detail. A lot of people think mixing is where it's going to start sounding like a song. But if you wait until the detail part, if you didn't get 99% of everything in just the basic cleaning stage, you're going to have a lot of work when you go to detail the car, right? So you want to try and wash as much as you can, as thoroughly as you can, and make it pretty much look like a finished job before you even get to the detailing. Because then the detailing, when you start mixing, that's going to be where you can do just these little tiny things that are going to be those little extras that are going to tickle the user's ear, and they're going to sound super cool, right? Now the mastering is kind of like when the washing's done and you've detailed the car, now you're going to put that nice layer of wax on it, right? So the mastering is just that little extra layer of wax. All the mixing's done, all the detail is done. You're just putting that little bit of extra just to put it over the top. And that's what I think a lot of producers, they put stuff off until the mix. And I did this when I started too. I would just record a bunch of stuff and I would think, oh, okay, I'll just fix it when I mix it. And that's a very common saying in the studio world. Fix it in the mix. And you have to avoid that, because what happens is if you don't make it sound like a song from the beginning, you're going to have trouble every step of the way, and you'll get super frustrated. So for now, evolutionary, I would just say that mixing and mastering, understand that most of the work, like 99% of the work, needs to get done in the production and the writing phase and the arranging phase. Because another issue is a lot of people hear something that doesn't work and they're like, oh, well, I'll just get the mixing guy to fix it, or I'll fix it in the mix. And the thing is, if you have a kick and a bass that don't really mix together well, or don't sync up or gel together, chances are you need to change the kick or you need to change the bass before you can even think about EQing or mixing to make them sound good together. So again, I could go on forever about that, but I'm going to do a separate, I'm going to do a course on mixing and mastering, but we will cover that again in more detail. But that's the main thing, is focus on the production, focus on your sample and your sound selection, focus on your arrangement, and keep everything organized so that when you do get to mixing and mastering, you're going to be able to find things and work quickly. So I think that's going to close it up for today, you guys. That was a little bit more on effects, and I wanted to answer everybody's questions that y'all submitted. Thank y'all for the questions. If y'all have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll try to get to everybody if possible. So once again, y'all have a great day. Be sure to share this stream. Go follow me on the other links that I posted in the comments on Linktree, and be sure to join the Music Producer School community. I'll be listening to your tracks over there on Saturday after class. All right, folks, y'all have a great day. I'll see y'all on Saturday. Peace out.